Hey guys, how's it going? It's Royal here. Just thought I'd make this quick video just talking about some theory crafting and speculation for the new Avatar fighting game that's coming out. I'm really hyped and excited. I've been a huge fan of this series ever since it launched, and same with Legend of Korra. And I always thought, I always dreamed of like there being a fighting game for this IP. It just made the most sense because it's all about martial arts and bending. So I'm glad they're finally making one, and I'm also really glad that it's a 1v1. I've been playing 1v1 fighters for a long time. Currently play Street Fighter 6, but I was always looking for a new 1v1 fighter to come out, and I'm glad that this is going to stay a 1v1. So yeah, so just kind of before we get into it, I'm going to talk about a couple things here. Just first going to talk about the characters and who we might see on the base roster as well as DLC. Talking about some mechanics and gameplay from what we've seen so far. And then some movement and element implementation they can kind of take inspiration from the series and incorporate into the kits for the characters and how it would translate in a fighting game. I think there's a lot of cool things they can do here, and I'll talk about that in a bit. So to kind of start off, I want to first talk about non-benders and like special benders or like specialty bending or like that's like a combination of either any of the four elements. I think this is such an underrated area, and this is really where you can get some of the craziest kits, and the devs can take a lot of inspiration from the series. So the first person I'm gonna put in this, we'll just talk about these three here. So we got Ty Lee, Mai, and Jet. I think these are really good characters for implementing non-benders into the game. So if you think about it, like in the series, like Ty Lee, for example, she's like a close-up fighter, right? And like her unique thing is like she can do like chi blocking, which is like it stops you from like bending, right? Because like pressure points or whatever. So imagine if like the flow stance or there's like a resource mechanic in the game, and she can't bend at all, right? But like her main thing is she's like a rush down character who's like up in your face, right? And then like she has her like flow stance or her mechanic is like she can drain some of your gauge. That would be a really cool implementation of that, and it can give like non-benders some kind of strength as opposed to just any bending character, because these guys most likely will not have like projectiles or any kind of special abilities that they can throw from a range, right? So you have to design them in a way where they have some unique advantage of playing them. So I think for Ty Lee, like you can have a non-bender rushdown character, she would be perfect for that. And then on the opposite side, you can have a zoner non-bender, and that would be Mai. Mai even is in the game if I'm not mistaken. Like yeah, you can kind of see her in the background here. I don't know if that's like just as a stage thing or she might actually come out, but in the series she throws darts. So I could see her being a zoner and have unique stuff with just throwing darts and just zoning using that. And then you've got Jet. Jet also not like a totally popular character, but like I could see him being like a Shoto because he uses swords. He has like that sword fight with Zuko in the series, and I could just see him just being like a typical sword character, just doing combos and just kind of footsies and pokes with the sword. So you can kind of have like all three different fighting game archetypes with these non-benders here. So that's that. And then when we talk about special benders, there's quite a lot. Oh, sorry, before we talk about special benders, I want to give honorable mention to Varric and where's Asami right here. Varric is I could totally see this guy being a goofy character with a unique kit, because in the series this guy's all about researching the spirit vines and spirit energy, right? So imagine he has some kind of like spirit gun that is like basically acts as like a zoning projectile, and then he can maybe make like robots or whatever, like as part of like his kit that can also control space on the screen. They can go like really like there's like a lot of creativity they can go with if they want to make him into a character, and he would be a pretty good goofy character to include in the game. And same thing with Asami. She, I think, in the first season of Korra fights a little bit with like those gauntlets that electrocute people, like that the Equalists were using. So you can have her like kind of similar to like Vi in a sense, from 2XKO. Like she can wear the gauntlet and then it has abilities, and then same thing with those like zip ties or like those bolas or whatever you want to call them that tie people up that they were throwing as well. Like you can have that as part of your kit as well. Um, there's a lot of like things they can do for all these characters that are non-benders, and I think they would be really good additions. If not at least like one of them on the base roster, at least DLC down the line. There's a lot they can do, especially with someone like Varric. Like you can go really crazy with like how you want to implement the spirit energy mechanic in this game. So that's it for non-benders. Now, talking about special benders, I think the main ones would be from Korra. So you got Pli, you got Minghua and Gazan, and then Pli is you can also have like Combustion Man from Avatar, like the Boom Boom Sparky guy. So Pli and him are basically the same thing. I imagine like just playing Pli, and she has like these explosions that are like that do a lot of damage, a lot of chip damage maybe, and they control a lot of screen space. And you can even make them plus on block if you want, right? You can kind of go crazy. You can maybe shoot them from the air, and so they can kind of go really like make her into a zoner as well, but like a special type where like she's mostly focused on doing like like her combustion moves to kind of zone people out. Minghua, like every time I see Minghua, she reminds me of Dawson but water. Like she has those water arms in the series, right? That those like water tentacles essentially, like they just go like a huge distance. So just imagine you're playing a zoner, but you've got like basically long full screen pokes. That's what Minghua would be. And you can also have some like cool water bending as well with her, but like I think she would be like much more different than a traditional waterbender, just because I think she doesn't have regular arms. She just has those water tentacles whenever she's nearby water. So basically just plays as like a zoner. I can totally see that in this game. And then Gazan as well. Like there's a lot of things you can do with lava bending in this game. Like obviously the first thing that comes to mind is make the floor lava, and that could act as like you either take chip damage or real damage while you're standing in it. So that forces the opponent to like be in the air or get out there, right? So he's got zone control, and then he forces you to in the air, and then his game plan could just be to like anti-air and just control like the ground, right? So there's a lot, and they can even do projectiles with them, and I'll talk about that in a bit. There's a lot of things you can do with lava bending. So that's that. And then in terms of let's see here, I just want to check. Yeah, I think that's it pretty much for the special benders. You could also add Amon as a non-bender. I'll talk about that in a bit. But I think most likely if they include him, he's probably going to play as a waterbender. But they could make him a non-bender because he does like he could just basically just be like someone who's doing parkour and just basic like martial arts. And this guy's I don't know what that would make him unique as compared to someone like Ty Lee, but there is something they can maybe do with him making him a non-bender or giving him the ability to like just stop your opponent from bending for a certain amount of time with some moves. That might be broken, but maybe they can implement that. But I see him more as like a water bender. So let's talk about airbenders. So in terms of airbenders, you've got Tenzin, you've got Zahir. Where is Zahir? You got Zahir here, and these two I'd say are probably like the most popular ones, and probably some of the most interesting kits that they can make, depending on what they've done from the series. So I'll talk about that in a bit. I also want to include Jinora, Kai, and Boomy. They're less prominent, but they do have some moments in Korra that they actually kind of do. They showcase some cool things. Like Jinora can go into the spirit realm, so you can maybe make some kind of ability with or some kind of kit that uses spirit energy or that goes into that form, maybe in like flow stance or whatever. I can kind of see that, but I don't see any of these three being on the base roster. I think they're most likely probably would come out as DLC if they do come out. Same thing with Kai. Like he and Aang aren't really like he doesn't differentiate himself from Aang too much. He just he uses a glider as well and whatnot, but doesn't really have anything besides that. So they would have to kind of make something new for him if they want to include him. And then Boomy, he's kind of a goofy character, but he has some unorthodox movement he can do because he's not like a traditional airbender, right? So maybe they can make him like a kind of like a grappler that can move around the screen pretty easily. For like an airbender, I could kind of see that. But yeah, that's it for the main airbenders. Then when you get to the waterbenders, so like I was saying, I think Amon most likely is going to be a waterbender. Then you've got obviously you've got sorry, not Lin, you've got Hama, you've got Katara's daughter. Where is that? Katara's daughter. Where'd she go here? Oh yeah, she's right there. And then you also have Unalak, this guy, the villain, and then you have Tarlok as well. I'll just put Tarlok right next to Amon. So for waterbenders, like I was saying, they're gonna have to kind of think about how they want to differentiate how each waterbender player or character plays, because there isn't like they I'll show some examples of it, but you don't want like these characters to all basically be like, hey, I throw out like a water projectile and then I do like a basic combo and that's about it, or maybe I can like, freeze my opponent or something like that. Like they would have to kind of really make something unique to each character, uh, that would make you want to play that character. So like for example, like I was talking about Minghua, right? You can kind of consider as a waterbender, right? But her unique thing is like she can just do full screen pokes, maybe if they include her in the game. But then what makes you want to play, let's say, Katara's daughter or Katara over, let's say, like Tarlok or Hama, right? They have to kind of make sure that their movement as well as the actual like move set for the character is different enough, and it has strengths and weaknesses in different areas for you to want to play them, right? Because the biggest thing I kind of fear for the game is like like there is different characters, but then they all basically are kind of clones of each other and they kind of do the same thing, and especially for like water and fire, I think that's a uh, big thing, or like a potential challenge, because you have to really make sure that the characters you make for these elements be unique. And it's kind of difficult, especially with fire, because fire bending in this entire series is like very similar. There's not like a whole lot of unique like applications of it. It's pretty much the same thing, but like firebending does have a lot of stuff when it comes to movement, but like the actual abilities itself, not a whole lot. And it's kind of the same thing with water, right? You can maybe like use like water tentacles or make like a water whip maybe as Katara. And then outside of that, you got like just basic water bending. You can make like a huge wave or throw out like a projectile of water. But you have to be able to do more than that to kind of give some kind of uniqueness to these characters. So yeah, and maybe it's possible they might be able to incorporate blood bending. I don't know if it's possible in a game, but it would be really cool if you could literally like blood bend your opponent, and let's say it's like flow stance or whatever, and then it stuns them for a minute and lets you do a combo, or some kind of it could be like a command grab. I can totally see blood bending being like a command grab, up close or maybe even from a distance. But then it requires some kind of like resource to use. That would be pretty cool if they can implement it, and that might make you want to play, let's say, like Amon or Tarlok over Katara, right? Because, or even Hama, like these three can bloodbend. Even Katara can technically, but like I think early stage Katara from like the Avatar series, I don't think she had mastered it yet, so that wouldn't make sense. So that might be a reason you would want to play these characters over Katara or Minghua, for example. And then when we get into earthbending, you've got obviously, I think the number one fan favorite and most requested would be Kuvira. Kuvira is just like insanely cool. Like she is technically a special bender because she can do metal bending, but it's primarily earth, and it's kind of the same thing with Lin as well, and her sister. I can totally see a lot of cool things they can do for all these characters, and I'll talk about that in a bit when it comes to how they use metal bending in their movement, but as well as like abilities and how you would implement it in a fighting game. Like you can have Kavira being able to like throw out not just metal projectiles, but like make a sword out of metal, like that she uses in the series, and that can basically be used as like a hitbox extension. You can have like Lin's metal wires be used to like traverse across the screen for movement, and then you can use the same stuff for like making it used as a hook for like a command grab, and all sorts of stuff. And then you got Boomy, King Boomy. I don't know what they would give him for movement, but like he is kind of a cool character as well. But I'm not sure how popular he is. And he might appear as DLC. I don't think he would be as a base roster, unless they're looking to go by elements. In which case, um, they might put him in Kuvira or maybe one of the sisters in Boomy. Actually, I think Kuvira would come first as an Earthbender and then maybe Boomy after. Or I still think like the Beifong sisters are more popular than Boomy, so Boomy might come out as a DLC later, but he can do some cool stuff, right? Um, you can even have Bolin. I can see Bolin coming out before Boomy actually, because he's probably more popular. And maybe his thing is he also has like one or two lava bending moves, right? Because he learns lava bending towards the end of the series. So yeah, I can see that. But as for Earth, like yeah, I think the roster is. Oh, I think there is definitely things that can separate each character here. So like you have different movement options with, let's say, Kavira and Lin, and some different abilities that aren't just basic like rock throwing or some kind of like rock ground wave or something like that as a projectile. So I can definitely see like Earth, I think, has a lot of unique stuff that they can make for characters. So they can definitely experiment with some stuff. It's not like Fire that you've got like Ozai, Mako, and Iroh. Like for example, all three of them basically can do lightning bending, right? So like, how do you differentiate between like Ozai and, let's say, Iroh, right? Because these both are pretty popular characters, and I would assume at least one of the two is gonna be in base roster, maybe even both. So like, what does Ozai's firebending offer that Iroh doesn't? Maybe Ozai can do it in the air, Iroh can't, and his is grounded. But then his grounded lightning might be plus on block, maybe, right? And then maybe Mako can do both, one in the air and in the ground, for example. Or maybe he's like more of a close-up fighter as opposed to just throwing out like fire and lightning from far, because he kind of does that mostly in the series. He fights up close. So yeah, I can kind of see that, but I think the biggest struggle here is going to be like, how do you differentiate them from Zuko and then all of the other characters that are firebenders? Because um, very similar movement, just the nature of the bending. So that's pretty much it for the characters. I think there might be more that come out. Like you can have obviously past avatars that come out as DLC. There's other stuff as here as well. Like you got like Edna and Desna, and then you've got, I don't know, this guy. But you've got like the Boulder, and you've got a few other characters, but I think mostly they would be DLC. For base roster, I think any of the non-benders could potentially be in there, as well as any benders from each of the elements. But I think the top five most likely would probably be either Zahira or Amon, as one of the villains from Korra, and then you have most likely Ozai. I would see it would. I don't think it would make sense without Ozai. I think he definitely is probably is part of the 12, and then Iroh I could definitely see as well, and then maybe even like Tenzin. Tenzin, I think might be, and then they might include one of the non-benders or special benders here, if they are thinking about that. So let's get into some stuff for the gameplay. So the game is like a four button game, and the main you got your light, medium, heavies, but then you've got like your flow stance, and this is basically what the entire game revolves around. Like if from the gameplay, you can kind of see it's all about like using flow stance to either evade or counterattack, and then we haven't even seen, like, they could probably do a lot more. They just haven't showed that yet. And one of the things I'm wondering, and this is just pure speculation, is like on the symbol for the flow stance, like right now it's because it's showcasing Aang here, right? So you've got the air symbol, but I wonder if the flow stance mechanic is, some things are similar across the element type. So for example, if you're playing an airbender, maybe your flow stance evasion is like, you, let's say, you evade the move and then you go into the air instead of just, like backdashing, for example, right? And that would make sense because if you're playing an airbender, you want to be in the air to, like do kind of mix ups or do air movement options, right? And then maybe for a waterbender, this might be different, where like they actually evade, they backdash, and then they throw out a projectile instead. Or some kind of like maybe for an earthbender, you backdash and then you throw up like a rock wall or rock shield. So there's like I do wonder if they're gonna make this unique to each character with all the move sets, or they're gonna have like some things that might be similar, like the evasion across all the elements, and then the actual move itself is just gonna be unique to each character. Um, and so far, like the way this like the gameplay that they've shown, there's a huge like importance of using flow like in neutral and just like generally like in your combos. And I don't know if there's a resource mechanic tied to this, because it would kind of seem kind of broken if you just keep using flow over and over to just like dodge stuff and extend combos. Even because like they haven't shown a single throw, if I'm not mistaken, in this game yet, and I doubt like Flo would be able to evade throws, but I do wonder the main mix up when it comes to this game, is it going to be based off of like left, right, high, low, or is it going to be a strike throw mix? Because um, theoretically you could just block everything with flow and some good defense if you practice. So even though the movement option in this the movement options in this game are pretty crazy, like you can do a lot, how easy is it going to be to open up someone? That really just depends on this entire flow mechanic and how often you can access it, and what are the downsides. Like what happens if, can you bait flow out without committing hard, and if you do bait it out, is it like really negative, and you're able to punish it? So all that's going to really just depend on this entire mechanic right here. Like this is basically drive rush, drive impact, drive reversal from Street Fighter 6, pretty much all in one kind of. So yeah. So kind of getting into the movement now. I want to showcase some examples from the series that I think they could incorporate for the characters if they decide to include them. So my first two here are about Ozai. Like in this, when he's fighting Aang here, I remember like in this fight, like he did this move right here where he's like kicking, he's throwing fire out from his feet to kind of fly, and then he's also throwing out flame up in the air. So this reminds me of this move very similar right now in the game with Zuko, right? He's throwing fire out. This is like a cross up, but like he hits both sides, right? But just imagine if you just like did a neutral jump with Ozai, and then you just did this move right here. They could have it either hit up, so you could have the hitbox for the flame go up, or down. So you could either hit grounded opponents, or above, or they might just give them both maybe. You can easily see that happening. Um, Same thing with here. He can kind of glide with lightning. So imagine he just has this, and he can quickly just go left to right or diagonally across with his lightning to do cross up attacks. Could kind of see that implemented here for his kit. And then you've got Zahir. He can literally fly in the series at the end, right? He learns to fly. And I don't know how they would incorporate that in this game, because that might be OP if you can just straight up levitate. Maybe this is something they lock behind flow stance, but that would be really cool if he can actually just stay in the air for some amount of time and just basically, just attack from the air. And it's like you gotta basically hold what he's doing or try to anti-air him. That would be pretty cool. You have Lin, like I was talking about with the metal wires. So like this is one application where I can completely see, like if Lin is in the game, you can throw like these metal wires on the stage. So imagine like you have the stage right here. She can attach one end of the rope or the metal wire and then use it to swing across, right? So that's one application for movement. And then later on, like as an ability, you can maybe throw like the metal wires grounded as like a hook. So this could be a command grab, or it could just be like a hook that is plus on block. So there's a lot of stuff they can do that's cool to her right there. Um, One other example I want to talk about is Master Paku versus Korra in this fight. So Korra, I think, like hits him with as like some kind of water attack. He takes that water attack, bends it back, and then freezes it mid-air, and then it starts to like basically skate on it. And imagine you could do that with like any of the water benders, right? This is what I'm saying, where like you don't want to give this kind of ability to every single one, because you want to make it a unique thing for each like for that character that is able to do it. So this could be a unique movement option for that character. So let's say maybe Master Paku comes out in the game. He's able to throw out a water projectile, and then let's say in flow stance, just freeze it mid-air, and then he can use that to either, create like some kind of like a wave that he can kind of go climb up on and jump off of, or like maybe skate on the ground with ice. That'd be really cool. And similarly, like in Korra right here, there's this one time when they're like, going to fight Amon on the stage, and both Mako and Korra, they actually they run across this wall, using firebending. They firebend on the side to kind of stay up, push them into the wall so that they can run forward. So imagine you have this, but then you're able to run up on a wall in the corner of the stage. So let's say like Mako, for example, if he ever came out, that would be a cool implementation, and that could be used as like a mix-up tool where you knock them down and then you run up on the wall, and then you can drop down and do ambiguous left-right mix-ups, or just even in general, like you can just run up the wall on the corner and then jump off of it, right? So that'd be a cool way to have some movement there. And then you've got some other abilities that they can kind of incorporate. So you've got your basic projectile attacks. So you've got like, Katara can do this ice disc attack. This is what I was talking about with Gazan. Lava bending also can be used as a projectile, and like it's a pretty good showcase in the scene when he gets out of the cage, right? He actually like spins it up into like a shuriken, and then he cuts the cage out, and then he's actually able to like bend this like fire or lava shuriken and hit the guards outside. And so you can make it so they can go in an arc, or you can control it maybe. So there's cool things you can do with that. You've obviously got your typical earth bending like rock wave that would control on the ground, and then I could totally see this being like a plus on block thing. So you don't want to like hold this, so it makes the opponent want to jump. Right, so you've got ground control for your earthbenders right here. And in the same scene here, like Tonrock, he actually creates this like ice sword as he's like going up to fight Zahir, right? And that's what I was talking about. Like you've got like this hitbox extension you can make for characters like Kavira, Tonrock, or whatever, where they're able to bend, and then now they play like a more poke or like footsie style, where you can just straight up like just attack from way further away. That's a cool implementation of that. And again, in this scene for earthbending or metal bending specifically, you can totally make like metal armor or rock armor. I can totally see that, and that maybe lets you get like a one hit of armor on your special moves or your normal attacks. So yeah, like that would be pretty interesting if they decide to include that. So and then you've also got, like I was talking about Minghua with like being water Dhalsim. Like you've got these like like huge water arm tentacles that you can use to attack, right? And then this is one cool idea I had. So Tenzin in this scene gets hit by like a combustion ability from like Pli, right? And so as he's falling on the ground, he throws like this. He does airbending to kind of control his fall. So I can totally see this as like a mechanic for, or like a movement ability for Tenzin, where he can just control how he falls to the ground. He can maybe like, this can act as like a double jump, right? Where you can jump up in the air and then use this to kind of stay in the air for a bit and have movement options. But I can also see this also being used as like a hitbox. So you can have this like gust of air that comes out being an actual hitbox, and if you block this allows Tenzin to then do like a jump again and mix you up, right? So it can act as like you jump across and then you throw this move out, and if they block it or they get hit by it, it allows you to then jump off of it or do a jump cancel with it. So that'd be a cool implementation of that. And then, like I was saying, Amon, if he is a non-bender, like they make him, and as a non-bender in the game, then he has a lot of parkour stuff that they can take inspiration from. But I most likely see Amon coming out as a waterbender if he does, and he doesn't have a whole lot of like water bending scenes in the entire like in the season one, because this is like literally the last episode, but they can kind of come up with ideas, right? Like you've got this water tornado and stuff. I think Korra does a similar move in the game right now, but it's used like diagonally. So like she launches you up and then it goes diagonal. So this could be just like a vertical version of it, or it could be used as like an anti-air maybe even. But yeah, there's probably more stuff out there. Like these are the things that came into my mind right now. But yeah, if you guys are interested in seeing more stuff, let me know. Definitely be happy to make a new video talking about some other stuff. And yeah, I'm just excited for this game to come out. Can't wait for to play the closed beta test. Hopefully I get in, and I'm definitely going to be making future videos for this game because I love Avatar. So yeah, if you guys like this, just give me a like and subscribe, and definitely make some more videos coming out. Thanks.